When is the last time, and it doesn't have to be a big deal, but when's the last time that you felt a little bit off on stage, like things weren't clicking on stage? And what do you think it was that attributed to that?
After the lockdown, it was like you're really rusty.
Right.
And it was tough to connect, especially with doing shows outside in a parking lot with a stage, people sitting in lawn chairs, sitting far apart, or even if there was a comedy club, 25% capacity, everyone's completely spread out, which is the worst for comedy. So, but
Right.
at that point, I was just happy to be doing it. So I knew I wasn't really connecting with the audience. But I open for a lot of rock bands, and sometimes that doesn't go well, like these heavy
Right.
metal. And you come out and they know you, but they give you about a minute. And if it's not working, it's tough because they're not there for comedy. They want to see the band. And there's a bunch of times I just didn't connect. I don't have the set for it anymore. You have to write a set for that kind of, to do that kind of stuff.
What is it? Is it more about like, sometimes you get a crowd and you're like, well, I got to stay on them. Like I can't give them a second, or is it more, are you doing music material? What is the specific set you got to write for those audiences?
Just quick one-liners. You pound away at them. But, sometimes you're just like, you can't let up. You can't, maybe I'm going too fast. It throws my rhythm off. I like playing at a comedy club where they're sitting and they're relaxed and they're there for comedy. When you're doing a venue, I was just in Atlantic City, open for this band at the Old House of Blues. Like last weekend, it's like 1,200 people in there, and they're not ready for comedies. And the first night didn't go as well. The second night, I'm like, I'm just going to take my time, and I'm going to do more like drinking, sex, drugs, those kind of jokes, sex jokes, but quick ones. No big setups, no work in the crowd, none of that stuff. And it worked a lot better. But I felt like the first night I didn't connect.
And when you're going into that situation, do you kind of feel like now, like, well, it's just about winning, even if we win like 17-14, or do you have it still in your head of like, I gotta kill,
No, you just want to win them over. No, you're not going to kill in front of a crowd like that. It's going to be tough.
Right.
So
right.
You just try to, you'll take a friggin' 3-0 win.
Right.
Field goal.
Yeah.
It was a 0-0 game till the end, and they kicked a field goal, like the worst game ever. You'll take that.
Right. It's really like sometimes you're just like, well, as long as the last 2 minutes go good, that's like the last thing they'll think of me.
True. I'm famous for jumping off stage early if I get a big laugh. I go, all right, I'm done. Good night. Right. And I'm like 4 or 5 minutes short or 3 minutes short on a 15-minute set. I'm like, I got a good laugh. I'm out. I'm not going to push it.
Right. Well, it's better than the alternative. The guy that's like, I'll tell you one more, and then he says that like 5 times.
That happened last night. I was working a club in New York, and I was working on new material, and I thought one was going to get a big laugh, and it didn't. I'm like, oh shit, I can't end on that. And I did like 3 more. I probably only went like 2 minutes over my time, but I said, let me do another one. I can't go off like this because it was like silence. Right. I was doing well up to there, and I threw them at the end. But then finally I got a decent laugh. All right, good night.
Right. Yeah. It's just at that point, it's just like anything over like a murmur. You're like, this will be enough.
This is enough.
To get me out of here. Yeah. Yeah. Do you when you have that where it's a little weird, where it's not the response you thought, does it stay with you, or are you pretty good at now just like that happened and it's over,
Well, you try to use it, like especially in New York when I do like 3 or 4 shows in a night, if one doesn't go well, I'm like, all right, man, I got to go back up there in 20 minutes and go do another show. So, it motivates you. You need some sets where you don't do well, because then you get like, I know I got the hang of this. And then you need to be humbled every once in a while.
Right.
Pick stuff around and go, listen, maybe it was me. Maybe I was just kind of like, my delivery wasn't great. I was just mailing it in up there. I don't know, but I know this next set, I got to get them.
Right. You make a good point of maybe it was me. And I think that's like, I don't know, as a comic, I feel like so split on that sometimes, where you go, it's where you internalize everything, where like, it's me. I suck at this. I'm horrible. This isn't working. And then there's other times where I'm like, this is the worst audience I've ever seen. You know, like nothing. Do you lean one way or another? Do you take it more the onus on yourself? Do you feel like they're just bad audiences that don't get it?
Yeah, no, there's definitely bad audiences, and I always like asking the comics that went on before or whatever, how's the crowd? They saw, or you're watching the show and like, oh man, this crowd sucks. So it's
Right.
like every comic's having a hard time with them. They're just not a good crowd. You'll get that. Or they're just in a bad mood, whatever it is. Who knows if they had to wait online to get in the club or
Right.
took them a while to get their drink orders, anything. Who knows? But that will happen a lot. But then when you get a good crowd and you don't do well, it's good. Look, the worst comics are the guys that don't give a shit if it goes well or not. If they don't do well, they don't take it personally. They don't go, fuck, man, I gotta work on my set, man. What am I doing? These jokes aren't work. I gotta come up with new jokes or whatever it is. Those guys never get anywhere. They just say, yeah, it's good. Well, yeah, I did great. Well, whatever. They don't care. So people like afterwards overanalyze their set. That's how you get better.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's always fun to like maybe you see this less and less, the longer that you're in it, but the people that always come off and you're like, how were they? And they're like, it was great. I killed every time. You're like, well, something's not adding up here. Like you
Yeah,
can't possibly be killing every time.
yeah, yeah. I always like to. I always ask comics like, if we're doing two shows in one night, how's the crowd? Good. Are they better than the last crowd? Which crowd did you like better? I'm always curious about that. I like the first crowd, but I like this crowd. Real okay, good. That's good to know going in.
Yeah. You're gathering a lot of information, which I think is helpful because, it's, I don't know, it seems to be like you're describing a very present version of yourself on stage, where you're really playing to that specific moment, which sometimes it's easy to turn on the autopilot.
Yeah, and like if the comic before me was like, man, the crowd's really sensitive. They're like, they're tight. So you just
Right.
know, don't go up there and just pound away at them from the beginning. Get them on your side, like get them to like you. Do
Right.
soft material, and then hit them hard.
I like that thought because I think I don't know. Sometimes it's always like happens to me. Like if I watch like a Bill Hicks documentary, like I'm like ruined for the next 2 nights of doing stand up. Where I'm like, I'm gonna go up there, I'm gonna prove a point. I don't care what they think. Meanwhile, I'm talking about Ubers and exit rows on airplanes. Like I
Right.
have no points to prove. But sometimes we get so like we draw our line so hard in the sand of like they're a bad crowd. Too bad. I don't care. I'm gonna hit them with it. If they don't like me, forget it. You know,
Yeah.
we forget that we're entertainers. You know what I
But
mean?
sometimes, like if they're a bad crowd, it's like you don't want to kiss their ass. You're
Right.
like, okay,
Yeah.
too bad. Then I'm gonna just keep doing my act. If you don't like it, I'm not gonna try to win you guys over. Like I don't give a shit. I don't care about you that much. And if you're a shitty crowd, you're a shitty crowd. So now I gotta like do all this hacking material to try to win you guys back. And it's like no. So sometimes like fuck them. I'm just gonna do my set. And sometimes if it's going bad and I know the crowd's tight and I'll just keep doing jokes that I know they're gonna hate just to
Right.
torture them, just to
Yeah.
torture them.
Right. Yeah. It's
Because like, oh,
like,
I already lost them. I'm not getting them back, so might as well have fun. I'll just make them feel even more uncomfortable.
yeah, like we're all gonna go down with the ship. You
Yeah,
know.
yeah. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
fun to do that. You gotta you figure it out. But I'm like, at some point, I'm like, I'm not kissing this audience ass, especially if it's like a 15 or 20 minute set. I'm like, if
Right.
you're doing like an hour headline and it's different, you kind of have to get them on your side. You can't just lose them 10 minutes into your set. You still got another 50 minutes. But a 15, 20, if they don't like, I'm like, fuck them. I'm not going to spend 4 or 5 minutes trying to get them back.
Right. You ever have this where you maybe the crowd's a little chatty or something, or they're kind of tight for the other comics, and you go like, well, I'm just gonna go. You kind of come up there with sort of like a mad dad, or like a real like almost a little bit too over the line. You're like, oh man, I came at these people pretty hard, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. They're
Like
not
they
ready
weren't
for it. Like,
expecting.
holy
Yeah,
shit.
right.
Whoa,
Yeah,
whoa, whoa, wait.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because
yeah.
like when I do a 15-minute set in New York City, it's different from when I do an hour on the road. So you got to be
Right.
more likable in the
Yeah.
15-minute set. And I'm like, fuck, I'm wasting a third of my set just setting up, and then I can hit them on the road. I'm like, I could do it when I want. but you can't start off. I want to start off rough right off the bat because I only got 15 minutes. I'm like, fuck, I got to do these, get this crowd on my side. They have no clue who I am.
Right.
And then I can hit them with the stuff I really want to do.
Right. Yeah. And it's such a weird balance too of like feeling like you've got some work done, but also making sure that the show goes well. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's but look, I mean, that's what I love about stand-up is you can't mail in every night. Every crowd's different.
Right.
So just when you think you mastered it, you didn't. The next crowd will tell you not. And I love trying to figure it out. It's almost like a quarterback, almost like Peyton Manning back in the day when he'd be in a shotgun and he'd be like, I'm gonna call an audible here. He's pointing, no, we're gonna change this because he sees the defense. He goes, no, I got to change this play up. That's what we're doing in our head. If it's not going, oh shit, all right, I got to go in a different direction here. Like we're a quarterback up there figuring the thing out. All right, I see a hole over here. Let's go with this. So
right.
I like that because I don't want a job where I just go, I just go up there and just tell jokes and no passion, no nothing. So I like figuring that out. It's a challenge every night.
And I think like it gets to the point where like when it becomes so scripted, the audience knows, they know you're not with them right then. You're somewhere else. You're somewhere else.
They totally can get absolutely like So you just gotta. I like doing that where you got to figure it out. I don't want to mail it. I don't never wanted a job where I had to mail it in. To me, there's no. And when I get sick of jokes, they stop working because I'm sick of them, and the crowd could tell that I'm sick of them. They don't work as well.
Right. Yeah, and it's like this vicious cycle of like, well, they don't like it because I'm sick of it, and because they don't like it, it makes me more sick of it, which makes me want to do it less, which makes and that. But
it's good because then you have to makes you motivated to write new material.
Right.
When you're like, I don't want to do those bits anymore. I'm tired of them. I always think about it like a band that has to do the hits every night. Right. Like if we had to do our comedy hits every night, it's like, man, it's like I want to do new stuff. There's nothing better when you're working on new material and it's working.
Right. Yeah.
And these guys, maybe they put an album out and they play one new song, and the crowd's like, I don't even know this song, and they're just staring at them. When they know their next song, the place could be going crazy, singing along to every word, and they got to do that every night. Like, yeah, you wrote some great songs, but I got to do that the rest of my career.
Yeah, it's funny, like when you get that first 10 or 15, whatever, 5 minutes that kills, it's like all you want to do is do that. You know what I mean? Because it kills and you want to kill. And then you start to get it. It's like, you're like, oh, I get why the Rolling Stones hate Satisfaction. It's like, well, on the outside, people are like, well, everybody loves this song. Isn't that great? Isn't that what you want? And then like, oh no, I need to get away from this,
Yeah, no, I know. And musicians want to be creative too. And it's like, they come up with they put out a new album and nobody gives a shit about the new stuff because their old stuff is so legendary and everyone knows it. So imagine a comic like you go, all right, I got to do that bit again that I wrote 10 years ago. And it's going to kill, but it's like, yeah, that's nice. It's nice to kill, but I would be, fuck, I got to still do it. Why am I getting on a plane and fucking, taking 2 Ubers and stuff just to go tell jokes that here we go. I got to do this again.
Right. Yeah. At some point, I feel like that's like quite a turning point where like, it's not just about like having fun. It's about like, you're like, what did I get out of it? You know what I mean? Like what did I come home with?
Look at it like, hey man, I'm giving, 17,000 people, I could just see the smiling and they're having such a great time and look at how like, the music that we wrote, but still playing it every night's got to be, I don't know. It would annoy the shit out of me.
Yeah. You, you've certainly done so much in your career. And when you think about, opening for rock bands and even just coming up in these clubs and these bar shows, are there any shows that you did that now maybe you have a bad crowd that motivates you for the next show, right? Are there any shows earlier on or whenever at any point of your career that still sort of sit with you of like, oh, don't get too cocky or don't get too comfortable because, well, remember that one night here because that's could always still come around. You know what I mean? You have any shows that stick with you like that?
Well, I know that I remember I did this like bar gig in like South Jersey, and we'd go in there. It was like a biker bar. We didn't know, and we're looking around like, we're telling them, where's the stage? Like, there's no stage. I'm like, what do you mean there's no stage? He goes, well, oh, actually, we're going to put a piece of plywood over the pool table, and you guys stand on the pool table.
Oh
so we stood on a pool table. They put a piece of plywood over it, and that was our stage. We were up at like, 8 feet in the air, and a bunch of bikers just sitting there. And we weren't going to argue because the guy who owned the place was a biker too.
Right.
We're going to get a shit beat out of us. Okay, that's what we got to do. I remember standing on a pool table with a piece of plywood over it as the stage and doing comedy, and just be like, oh man, I don't want to piss these bikers off. I want to get my money and get the fuck out of here.
Right. Yeah.
I'm like, this isn't comedy. What the hell is going on?
It's so funny the places that you'll put yourself in, the danger that you'll put yourself in for what, gas money? You know what I mean? It's
yeah,
stage
I know,
time.
$50, $75 or whatever. Right. But there was another one where there was a strip club. It was a bring your own all nude strip club in Phillipsburg, New Jersey, called the Boxcar. Mm-hmm. And they'd have comics go on in between the dancers. So me and like Rich Voss, Jim Norton, Bob Levy, we would do it because they pay you really good money. You had to do 4 different sets, 5 minutes at the top of every hour, starting at like 9 o'clock. And they had no clue that the comic was going to be there. They didn't care. They got coolers of beer. It was like a bad fishing trip. A bunch of fucking guys in flannels with coolers of beer. And then all of a sudden, hey, how you guys doing? Anybody married in here? They're like, get the fuck off, the screaming. Because right behind the stage was the backstage for the girls. So you got naked girls going backstage. That's where the door was. Right. And they get out of the way. And guys getting a lap dance. I'm like, so who's been on a plane recently? We'd have to hide in the office in between the sets because people wanted to beat us up. They were mad. We don't want a comedy show. We got music on. We're getting lap dances. We're drinking. We don't want to hear jokes, but they paid us well. And I did it like 4 or 5 times. And
right.
I kept doing it. I'm like, why am I doing this? And then I had to go back out again. If it was just one set, I can get out. But I would have to hide in the bathroom because in the office, because I'm like, someone's going to punch me. They're really mad. And I go back up at the second hour, like, get the fuck off the stage. Get off, screaming.
Oh my
I don't know why. And we do it all the time. Like we get like, yeah, I want to get booked again. And I'd be driving home like, oh, what am I doing with my career? I shouldn't be doing this.
Saying I want to get booked again is the most relatable thing for a comic.
Because it was like I was doing comedy like 3 years. They pay us like $500 in cash.
Right.
To do like 4 sets. So I'm like, yeah, that's fucking great money.
Yeah.
But you were just dreading it when you go like, oh my God, how am I going to get through this? 4 sets.
Right. 4 sets. When I'm assuming it's starting late. You know what I mean? That's a late night.
Pretty much like 9 o'clock, 10, 11, and 12.
Yeah.
Top of the hour, 5 minutes.
Right.
But still, I'd rather just do one and get it over with.
People have a hard time talking to a crowd that's like watching TV. You know, like there's a game on. People don't want to listen to comedy.
I mean, these guys are all getting lap dances. They're in the back room, this, that. And all of a sudden the music stops and a comic comes on. Hey, how you guys doing? I'm going to tell a few jokes. Okay. Boo. Boo.
Right. Yeah. It's horrible.
I went back like 5 times.
And what people don't realize is that sounds horrible, right? Like to do that for that 5 minutes feels like an eternity. But people don't realize, like you said, you got to get in a car and drive home. However long that takes you, now you're just sitting with whatever just happened for X amount of time,
Yeah.
In silence.
Yeah, I would sometimes I'd have the bouncers walk me out to the car because I thought someone would beat me up in the parking lot if they saw me. That's that comic. So they'd walk me out to the car. I'm like, well, I'm going to get the fuck out of here. Yeah, and that long drive home, like an hour and a half. I'm like, what am I doing with my life?
Right.
Like, this is not what comedy's supposed to be. I'm fighting with people. I'm screaming. I'm trying to stay alive.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Like if you worked like in an insurance agency and someone threatened you, you'd be like, I have to leave this insurance agency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I just kept going back.
Job. Right. Yeah.
And it's not like you're learning anything. Like you always just work in your mind. Like, nah, it's going to make me a better comic if I get a rowdy crowd. No, it doesn't. There's no crowds like that. You're never going to perform in front of crowds like that. So you're just lying to yourself. But that's how you make it up in your head that you should be doing it.
Right. Yeah. Like you're never going to get on stage at like a Funny Bone or a Helium. And they're like, yeah, we just pulled all these guys in off the street. They're half hammered and just a bunch of naked women,
Yeah.
and like, that's never going to happen. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Oh my God. That's insane. Do you ever, I don't know, do you ever like think back on those days and go like, I was this close to like just being done with it? Or were you pretty much always just all in after?
I was all in.
Yeah.
When I started making a little money, I was like, man, this is what I want to do for a living. When I was making like $350 a week as a comic, I'm like, I made it. To me, I'm like, I made it. I was still living with my parents. I didn't have any bills. I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Go to bed at 2 or 3 in the morning, get up at like 10 or 11, go do a show, go tell jokes, get a little money. I'm like, this is fucking great.
Right. It's those little things too that like keep you that $350 on a weekend will buy you 6 months in comedy of like, I'll do this 6 more months, because I can always come back to this moment of how fun it was.
I get, $50 on a Tuesday to drive like 2 hours, 75 on a Wednesday to drive an hour and a half, then a weekend, maybe like 225. I'm like, this is great.
Right.
I'm getting paid to do this stuff. This is awesome. Yeah. So to me, early on, I'm like, I already made it. I was like, I didn't have big goals. I'm like, this is great. If I could do this the rest of my life, this is awesome. I don't have a boss. I could say what I want. I could dress the way I want. I don't have to listen to anybody. I love it.
It is funny, like how little we want out of this business. You know what I mean? Like when you talk to like lawyers and doctors, they're like, I'd like to get 10 years at the college or whatever. It's like, what would you like? It's like, if I could like kind of break even, like that would be great.
Break even, maybe do a couple late night shows, do some stand up on there. I mean, yeah, you set some goals, but it's like, then you sit back and realize, like, even now, I just sit back and go, I make really good money just by telling jokes and being my own boss and making my own schedule. I go, what a great life I have. What a great job I have.
And it's such a, that well of going into like, well, what else is out there? What else should I be doing? What is that person doing? Is so poisonous. Then I think it's easy to get lost in that and forget, like, I'm literally doing exactly what I want to do,
I never gave a shit about that stuff, even early on.
Really?
I didn't care if anyone was doing better than me. I'm like, if they were, and I thought that was funny, I would just use it as motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if that guy can get that, then I know I can.
Yeah.
There's hope. But I never got jealous. Why is this guy doing it and I'm not? I'm like, I don't care, whatever. I'm doing my own thing. I got to worry about my own career. I was always happy when people got stuff. I go, that's going to help other comics. It's going to open more doors. Whatever. And I just like, I don't, that person was in the right place at the right time, or they work harder than you. You know what I mean? I'm not going to sit back. I started with him. How come he's doing this? And we both start at the same time. Well, maybe he works harder than me.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe I'm fucking around too much and I don't really care and I'm not taking it seriously. So I always kept that shit separate. And I would use it as motivation. If someone I thought I was funnier than got something big and I didn't, like, okay, if that guy could do it, then I can do it.
But yeah, such a healthy way, I think, of looking at it, and probably takes, or I should say, it adds years to your life in this business because it's so easy to go to the other way and become bitter and jaded. And then in 10 years you go, I don't even want to do this anymore.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, that's happened with a lot of guys. I just knew not to. I saw the guys when I first started, they were all around for a while and they were miserable because they pretty much peaked. And I was like, I don't want to be around these guys. These guys are so negative. I'm like, this is all just got paid $25 to tell dick jokes. This is great. And meanwhile, they're bitching. I'm like, I don't want to be like those guys. Right.
Yeah. Everything, it feels like in this business is so up to a point, maybe you don't feel like this anymore, is so life and death of like, this spot tonight has to go well because if this person's watching, if they watch and they like me, it leads to this, this, and this. Did you ever have a moment in your career that you're like, well, this is my moment. I have to do well. It didn't do well, but here you are so many years removed and you're still doing it. You know what I mean? It didn't really matter.
No, and look, there are nights absolutely when you're auditioning where the club owner's going to be there. You're trying to get a new club, and you do. There's pressure on you. You know, when you need pressure, everyone has pressure in their job,
Mm-hmm.
so you need that too. And you know, you got to be ready for that. And then if you get bigger and bigger as a comic, you're going to be in bigger stakes where you're going to be under pressure to do well. So you know, you need those nights too, and that's part of But then also, it's like, hey man, if you can make a good living doing what you love, like, what's wrong with that? All these comics are doing that now. They got podcasts, they're touring on their own, they're building their own fan base. It's like you don't need Hollywood. Some people are ass kissers and want to go to Hollywood and do whatever they got to do to make it. Meanwhile, there's a ton of comics out there with popular podcasts that are packing comedy clubs, theaters, and stuff like that, and making
Right.
a lot of money doing it their way, putting their own content out, controlling everything, owning their own stuff. And it's like, what more do you want out of the business? You know,
Right.
wasn't everyone's goal to play to their own fan base, like get big enough where they got fans coming to see them? That was always my goal.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a good point. Because some people look at this sort of new comedy world and go, well, we need, well, it used to be you had to go in front of this person on this night at this show, and they get upset about that. That's gone. But because every, structure is now gone, it really is just sort of like an open forum for comics to do what they want.
It's way better now than when I started because the goal was to get on Letterman or Leno, do a late night spot, be 5 minutes squeaky clean. You know, they were handing out like 3 or 4 HBO specials a year. That was it. Comedy Central, you could do maybe their show, 10-minute set on there, or whatever, maybe get a half-hour special. But there wasn't a lot of options to get to the next level. Now you could get the next level on your own.
Right.
People will notice. You start selling out 5 shows at Helium, everyone's going to, who is this guy, man? We want him. And like, what's the buzz on this? And that's how you make it, do it on your own. We couldn't do that back in the day unless we got on TV.
Right.
When I started.
Yeah. Yeah. It is wild to see, like, I mean, I'm sure, people, they get a Tonight Show, not saying that the Tonight Show isn't still a great thing. And they get a Tonight Show and they're like, yeah, I got like 100 new fans on Instagram. That's it. Like,
I did a late night show one time and I plugged the Funny Bone in St. Louis I was playing at for 5 shows that week, and they plugged it. And I asked every show how many people saw me on it, and three people the whole weekend raised their hand.
Yeah, right.
And that was like 10 years ago. So I knew it's like that. A local radio show that's popular is way more, get asses in the seats way more than a late night show. Plugging, oh, he's going to be at the Funny Bone in St. Louis.
Right.
How many people are actually watching are going to come? But you do the local Preston and Steve in Philadelphia, you'll sell the place out.
Yeah, that's a great point. What fun little road to go down. I'm sure you've done a ton of morning press that, like, go in, here's the bio, what jokes do you want to do? What do you think the best morning radio that you've done is? And what do you think you don't have to say who it is, but the worst for whatever situation morning radio that you've done?
Very rarely does that happen. They always go like, what do you want to talk about? I'm like, I don't know, whatever you want to talk about. Well, you got anything? I'm like, nah, not really. Like, okay, usually very rare do they go, hey, listen, we're going to set you up with, some jokes from your act and do them. Like that happened a couple times, but usually I would just go, hey, man, well, let's just talk about whatever. I don't know. What was it? You want to talk about sports? Yeah, I know. In Los Angeles. Yeah, I hate the Dodgers. So let's talk about the Dodgers, and then we just go on the air. I just rather keep it casual. So I could usually play it off instead of them going, how'd you start comedy? All that stuff. So you just look, that's part of the gig is getting up and doing, radio and doing press and stuff like that. It sucks, getting up at 7 a.m. You don't want to get up and go in there. But look, I went on Howard Stern when he was back in the day when he was, still on regular radio. And that guy made my career by going on there and plugging my gigs and stuff, and this Preston and Steve is huge in Philadelphia. Those shows know it, they get it. And they just conversational, they love comedians. They love having comedians in, which is great. You want to find a morning show where they're not jealous that you're funnier than them.
Oh, that's a great point.
Or they're super conservative and they go, ooh, if you make kind of risque joke, like, whoa, okay, but so there's a bunch around the country where you could just be yourself, and they love comics. Opie and Anthony back in the day were another show that would go on. Jim and Sam now on Sirius. But you just find those shows where it's loosely you just go in there and riff, and that's what a comic is its best.
Yeah, yeah. Instead of, I mean, you said it best, like, how did you start? When did you start? I mean, God, how many times have you answered that question? You're like, but who cares? You know what I mean? Like,
I know it's really not that. I know when they go, so how'd you start? How'd you get into comedy? I'm like, it's going to be a long interview.
It's a long segment. Yeah.
Yeah. How'd you do? Did you? Right. Yeah. I just go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just went up one night. I just figured I gave it an open mic. I went up and I liked it. I just keep it short. I'm like, I don't, doesn't really matter.
If you hear the word influences, you're in trouble.
Yeah, like who we influence coming up, like we a big
yeah.
All right, let me just answer it. You don't want to be a dick, but it's like, oh boy, this is gonna nobody really cares.
And you don't really get to, like you said, you don't really get to do what you're there to do, which is be funny.
Right. I know. You're just answering questions. Yeah, like Richard Pryor, George Carlin, yeah. So yeah, exactly. You're not trying to be, you're not being funny, but they don't know how to be funny, and they're always afraid they're going to get fired. God forbid the comic says something or they do some a little edgy shit, especially if it's regular radio.
Right.
They're always nervous, so they're always got their guard up.
You kind of touched on it earlier with opening for rock bands, and it comes up again here with, they don't really, sometimes these people don't really know how it works. It is crazy to me how much goes into making a good comedy show and making things look funny and sound funny that has nothing to do with the comedian and their act. You know what I mean? Like, there is so much, I feel like, that has to be done correctly. And how many times you've been in like a situation, like a corporate gig, like, hey, we're going to have you do our college gig. We're going to have you come do comedy. Great. There's no host. There's no opener. You're going to do an hour cold, and it's 4:00 and the windows are open, and people are eating. It's like, and they go, well, just like, what do you need? You need a microphone? Why? It's like so much goes into this to make it work,
Yeah. When the crowd's all lit, like in the afternoon, or you're in some place, wherever, and they don't have any lights to turn down. There's no spotlight on the stage. There's no stage lighting. When the crowd's all lit and it's everybody could see each other, they're not going to be good because they're afraid to laugh at something that might be inappropriate because people could see them. They feel comfortable when they're in the dark.
Right.
So if you do a corporate gig or some gig and they keep all lights, is there any, can you turn the lights down now? And the whole crowd could see each other. And I don't want to see their faces. Yeah. I don't want to see some woman with a fucking miserable mug on her face because that throws me off. I look above the crowd. I look straight above them. It looks like I'll play with people in the front if I have to. Yeah. I'll look at them, but I just look straight out into space. Looks like I'm looking at the crowd. I don't want to see them.
Right.
And when those it never goes well when the whole room's lit up. Yeah. Because they really don't want to laugh. They're afraid, like, oh, I got to look around. I can't laugh at that. I might get in trouble. So absolutely, you need a good spotlight on stage. You need a good sound system. Everybody's got to be seated on top of each other, close to the stage, low ceilings, and that's and no talking. Don't serve dinners while people are on stage. So many shows where I was the MC and the whole crowd's eating. The guys cut the steak as I'm telling jokes. So yeah, this is gonna go great. He's fucking eating, looking at me.
Right.
And the just wants to sell food. They don't care about the comics.
Yeah. It's like an Applebee's. You might as well be being an Applebee's.
Yeah, there was so much. We got to get the dinners out. Yeah, I remember emceeing, and the freaking waitress comes with a tray of like 8 dinners in the front row. Who got that? I got that one. Your chicken, that's mine over here, and I'm standing right here.
Yeah, right.
Everybody's looking, and they're all right. I got mine. Could you pass the salt? I'm like, what? This is a joke.
Yeah, dude. Have you ever had like some of these corporate shows where they go, you can get yourself something to eat, like you're eating with the people before you have to go on stage? Nothing kills the magic of comedy more than like sitting and having someone watch you eat like rigatoni, from like a chafing dish.
And you always feel like a loser, so you sit by the table by yourself. You don't know anyone. You're like, let me get this food. I'm gonna go up there and bomb. They're gonna hate me. Yeah, go get some food. Yeah, there's a buffet over there. Yeah, eat. Go on in about a half hour. All right, and then You go up there, you just and then you go sit it by yourself like a loser.
Right. Just a plate of like cold mashed potatoes. And
Yeah.
it's always
You
like
don't want to
stuffed
tell
chicken
people, oh,
breast.
you're a comedian? Oh, really?
Right.
So, hey, rib on him. He fell the other day when he was skiing.
Yeah, right.
Make jokes about him.
That's always something too, where some of these gigs they go, hey, make fun of Bill. He's a drunk. Make fun. It's like,
Yeah.
listen, I mean, I'm not gonna do that, because best case it goes well and Bill's kind of annoyed.
Yeah.
Worst case is Bill's now he's been outed for being a drunk. Like, and everybody's uncomfortable.
Yeah, I know. It's terrible. Yeah, that one guy, he's always late, so try to make some jokes about that. Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. I figured, what I figured I would do instead of that? I would do the act that I've worked the last X amount of years on.
Yeah,
Is
I'm
that
just gonna do
okay?
my act. That's what you hired me for. I don't give a fuck that guy's late for work.
Right.
George
Yeah.
Carlin couldn't make that funny. So
Yeah. Before we get out of here, I love to ask comics this. After a bad show, do you have any vice or ritual or habit that you sort of like to do that kind of gets you out of that headspace, or maybe it's a guilty pleasure that sort of makes you feel like that at least that was palatable and tolerable?
what to get you out of a bad mood? I don't.
Yeah.
Like I said before, I think it's good that a bad show affects you. That
Mm-hmm.
means you care about what you do.
Mm-hmm.
I record all my sets on my phone. I won't listen to a bad set for some reason. I know you can learn from listening to a bad set. I'll listen to the good sets, or I'll listen to a set where I was doing new material, or I ad lib something, so maybe I could put it in my act. But I'll leave it alone. I won't listen to that bad set. I'll erase it, and then in the morning, I won't carry it into the night. And the next day, I'll say, all right, I got to come up with, I got to figure this out. Like maybe I got to switch the set list. I got to come up with different material. Maybe the order was wrong. Like, what did I do wrong last night? So I don't do it again. But I don't harp on it. I'm like, it pisses me off. I'll be bummed out for like an hour. I'm like, whatever. It was a bad day at work, but it was an hour or 45 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever the set was. If people have a bad day at work, usually it's for 8 straight hours. We're in and out pretty quick if it's a bad day at work. That's why I always look at it. It's a bad day at work. Tomorrow will be different.
That is such a, like, not, for lack of a term, like a great, like Zen almost way of looking at it, of just being like, this is just a day of work,
A day of work.
and it's over. It's over.
And it's
You're
over
done.
quick. It's over a
Right.
lot quicker than being in an office for 8 hours and you're having a horrible day and you got to
Right.
plow through it for 8 hours. We're done in 50, but it's a 15-minute set or a 45-minute set or a 30-minute set, and our day's over. Okay, everyone has a bad day at work. Tomorrow I'll do better.
Yeah, man, that's so much better than internalizing it and just being like, and tying your identity to it. Be like, I didn't do well. I must be a horrible person, like.
Look, yeah, yeah, absolutely. You're gonna have those those off nights, and feel bad for a while, but then you got to get over it. I look at it to sports players too.
Right.
A guy, they throw 4 interceptions. They got to come back next week. Or in baseball, whatever. The guy strikes out 4 times. They got a game the next day. They got to forget that shit.
Right. Yeah. It is so mental.
It is. It's all like you see a quarterback come in, he throws an interception, it gets returned for a touchdown. He's right back on the field 5 minutes later. He's got to forget that. He can't bring that back out there. And go, all right, he made a mistake. Let's move on. Think about it for like they say 5 seconds in football. Think about it for 5 seconds and move the fuck on.
Yeah.
Because it's all mental.
And to sort of wrap up, after all the bar shows and the shows at the strip club and the the driving and the rock bands where people don't care, they're not there to see you, what do you think you pull out of all of those experiences that sort of puts you where you're at now, where you go, it's just a day at work? What did all those things sort of get you to where you are? How did they get to where you are now?
You appreciate the good shows, and then sometimes you need like those rough shows to really like shape you as a comic, where you can handle anything.
Right.
You can handle a rowdy crowd, or you could just a weird situation you put in.
Right.
Like, how am I going to do this? So those little those little places where you cut your teeth in those little bars where it's not going well and they're talking and they don't care and somehow you win them over. That might help when you go to the Montreal Comedy Festival and the crowd's rowdy, or you have to follow a killer, act at Helium. You got to go on after him and you're like, shit, man, this is going to be tough, and it is tough. But then you learn from them, and then if you have to do a TV show taping and you have to go on after someone that's really funny, you already learned that stuff when no one was around.
Right. Yeah.
Like that in the New York, like going after David Tell. It's like you have to do that a lot, or Jim Norton or Colin Quinn or so, and these killers, and then like, oh man, and it doesn't go that well. But then you learn, okay, I got to go on. This is what I got to do. So when you do it, I've done TV tapings where there's been like 6 or 7 comics, and I'd be devastated and petrified if I have to go on after a killer act. But I learned it on a Tuesday night at the Comedy Cellar.
Right. Yeah.
When 10 people around, I learned how to just deal with it.
Yeah.
And the crowd's not going, when David Tell goes on before me and then I get introduced, the crowd's not going, oh man, let's see if this guy's funnier than David Tell. They don't have an agenda. They'll make a decision maybe 5 minutes into the set if I'm not doing well, but they're not like, oh, there's no way this guy could follow Dave. Who's this? Like they want to like you too. So if you put it in your head that you're not going to do well because he's such a killer act, then most likely it's going to go bad.
Wow. That is a great point. We really do put our own agendas onto the audience. A lot of times.
And the audience doesn't come in with an agenda most of the time. Sometimes it's better to ride the wave. If someone kills, you ride that wave and the audience is ready to go and they want to laugh. So you can just ride that wave instead of going, oh, fuck, if my first joke doesn't work, I'm dead. They're going to hate me.
Right.
And they don't. They're like, we don't hate you. We just didn't get that one. It just wasn't that funny.
Right.
What's your next joke?
How many times you see comics do that? The first joke or the second joke doesn't go like, well, I guess you hated that. That sucks.
Yeah, I know.
Like, what are you doing?
And it's funny because if you do that in a 45-minute set, if you go, oh, man, that joke bombed, then people after the show go, oh, man, tough crowd. Because they only remember when you said that joke bombed. The audience wouldn't even know that joke bombed. They just go, you could just move on to the next thing. Yeah. But you acknowledge it and you put it in their head that it bombed. And then after the show, wow, it was a tough crowd tonight. Meanwhile, it wasn't. It was just that one joke. No, I thought they were good. Oh, God, I don't know. It was rough, man.
Right. Nothing's worse than when you think you do well and you come off and somebody goes, rough night, huh?
No, like, I know.
What?
And some guy did that last night in New York. I did this show and he goes, these 2 guys come up. He goes, Sue, he goes, we loved you. He goes, but the girls at our table hated you. I'm like, well, that's how it usually works out.
Yeah, right.
I didn't take offense to it. I thought it was funny. I'm like, okay, yeah, exactly.
But also, have you never talked to anyone before? Like, is this your first time having a conference? Like, that's not like,
I know you really shouldn't say that. I like when people come up. Look, usually the wives come up. I never heard of you, but my husband's a big fan, so I figured I'd come out. I didn't know who you were. I'm like, okay, so did you? And you surprised me. You were funny. I'm like, okay, thanks.
Yeah. Hey, thanks. And I'm glad I could be here for your first time giving
a
compliment.
I never heard of you. My husband, it's like, do you have to say that?
Right. Yeah. You can just say good job.
Because the husband laughs like at my stuff and they don't laugh at her dumb jokes. Right. I get jealous. Like, why does he laugh at that fucking asshole? Now I got to go see him.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh man. I cannot thank you enough for doing this. I really appreciate it. You've got a special that's out now. Tell people where they can find it and where they can find you.
My comedy special's out. It's on my YouTube channel. It's free. Go to youtube.com/Jim Florentine Comedy. My new special called Bite the Bullet. And it's there. You can watch it on your phone, whatever the fuck you watch. And go check it out.
You're on Instagram and Twitter and stuff?
Yeah, my Instagram and Twitter got hacked for like a month and a half. I finally got it back. But yeah, Instagram is Jim Florentine, Mr. Jim Florentine on Twitter.
Right on. Right on. Well, thanks for doing this, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Absolutely.
Of course.